Hey now, good morning PASW staff, clients, and friends joining us for a lovely Tuesday. Welcome. Yesterday we looked at your film scoring assignment, Fantasia, the great 1940 Disney film. Get the music into me by today. And you know how it goes. We're going to see it on Friday. I don't need to explain all this, right? If you haven't done it before, join in. It's fun. Okay, we're going to look at somebody who's going to make us all feel a little bit inadequate because he was such a prodigy. And, researching this class is very exciting. And then it's also just like, oh, shoot, have I done anything with my life? But he's written some wonderful music, and it's important that we talk about him. So today we'll be looking at the very famous German composer, Felix Mendelssohn. If you don't know Mendelssohn, you know his music, in particular one piece that we're going to look at the end of class that's played all of the time still. He wrote some just wonderful pieces of music. Early romantic, kind of classical composer. So we'll get into his life. He was a pianist, composer, organist, conductor of the early romantic period. And he wrote symphonies, concertos, piano music, organ music. He wrote 5 operas, 11 symphonies. He did it all, and he really did all of the best work before he was 20 years old. So we got to get over there. We were in Burbank with Fantasia and Disney, so let's go over to Hamburg. We're not going to be talking about the Beatles. The Beatles were in Hamburg, but a few hundred years later. This is when Mendelssohn's born in 1809 in Hamburg. He kind of grows up in Berlin, but he's born in Hamburg in Germany. And he dies in 1847 of a stroke at age 38. So, good thing he wrote most of his music before he was 20, because, he really didn't live that long. And we need our timeline. This is what we're looking at. He's kind of right when Wagner's starting, although their music sounds nothing alike, and they didn't like each other's music. Wagner was intensely romantic, as we know, and Mendelssohn was pretty conservative in his writing. He was very devout. He was so into Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart, and continued in their style. So wasn't radical in any of his approaches to music, but very melodic composer. Robert Schumann, who's a great composer as well, called him the Mozart of the 19th century. He's Jewish. They convert to Christianity, but he's born in a pretty elite, wealthy family upbringing. His parents could provide pretty much in a small orchestra at their house every Sunday to perform works that he had done. He makes his first appearance when he's 9 years old. Now, his sister, Fanny Mendelssohn, is a very, very great composer herself. Of course, because she was a woman back then, she didn't get proper recognition, but she was very close to Felix, and both of them were very close to each other musically, and he would publish some of her music under his name just because it wasn't really allowed back then. Although she was encouraged to write. She was pretty supported by the family. Mendelssohn exhausted himself. By the time he could write music, he was trained, in piano and composition and counterpoint and all those things. But he composed 12 symphonies between the ages of 12 and 14. 12 symphonies. That's even surpassing Mozart. Mendelssohn was really responsible for making Bach famous again. And I said this in the Bach class. Now we're finally getting to Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn started performing a lot of his music at his own concerts. That he would put his music in, and then he would put Bach's music, and really brought Bach back to life. Some of the romantic composers didn't like him, including Wagner, like we talked about, because he, like we said, and like we're listening to, it sounds kind of like an extension of Beethoven and Mozart. He's very much in the classical tradition. This is why it's early romantic. It's not quite. It doesn't sound anything like Wagner. It doesn't sound anything like Tchaikovsky. Obviously, this is before, but he's very much in the tradition of reinventing the classical period, okay? Because, you know, Mozart and Beethoven in the classical period. So he wants to kind of, his goal is to not go too far out of bounds with classical music and or just music in general. He's kind of reinvigorating the old classical forms, just using a little bit more sophisticated orchestration. That's kind of what he's bringing to a modern twist of it, but staying in the traditional realm of Mozart and Beethoven. Probably his most famous piece is the overture to Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. He wrote this when he was 17. Brilliant. I mean, 17, gosh. And then with the incidental music for Midsummers, we see if you've heard this piece before. Yes, Mendelssohn wrote the famous wedding march that people still play today. So that's from 1842, Midsummer Night's Dream, and one of the best pieces of music history. I mean, it's still played. The wedding march is still played, and it was played at the marriage of Queen Victoria's daughter, Victoria, and in 1858, and after that it kind of became standard just to perform at weddings. Great piece. So you can hear it does sound very classical, like Beethoven and Mozart. The orchestration's a little bit more, a little bit more elevated, and that's what he's doing. But he's still staying in a kind of conservative classical way of writing. But there's melody, right? There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of tension in the orchestration. There's really beautiful parts of the music. That's a little taste of Felix Mendelssohn, and his sister Fanny wrote some beautiful music, and maybe we'll look at her at another class because she was great. She suffered a stroke, and it really upset Mendelssohn, and he was very scared of suffering from a stroke as well, and he did actually 5 months after she died. So he died at 38, but lived a pretty good, happy life. No alcohol, no marriages. He was married, but just no money problems. Very, lived a life that I think he wanted to, but overworked himself a lot, I think. And before he died, he described death. Not that we're going to get into the philosophy of death, but his quote was, "Death is a place where it is to be hoped there is still music, but with no more sorrow and no more partings." So if there is an afterlife, if there is a heaven, or whatever you do believe in, we all have our own personal thing. After this, yes, let's hope that there is music there wherever we do end up, or whatever does happen. If there can be music, we all need and love music, right? I mean, all of us. I'm just sharing classical music with you today, but obviously you have your own personal music that you love, that you listen to every day, that you think about every day, even if you're not conscious of it. It's always going on in your brain, in the subconscious, in the unconscious. So yes, when death happens, hopefully there is still music, and no more sorrow or partings, because life is so full of sorrows and partings. So if we can have a little bit of music later on, because we're having fun with music as we're alive, but let's hopefully continue the fun, right? Okay, this was a good job. We looked at this is good, right? We like it. Mendelssohn, great composer, prodigy, wrote all of his music before he was 20. So I'm gonna really have to get to work on writing some music maybe today, but That's on my own problem, neuroses. Okay, love you and miss you. We're gonna, well, I don't want to give it away. We're gonna have fun tomorrow though, for sure. Okay, I've said it all, said too much probably. Okay, love you, miss you, bye.